Good morning, happy Thursday. We're almost through our second week of distance learning, as crazy as that seems. I hope you're all well and getting through each day is the best that we can. Your work is beautiful. I like seeing it and seeing the stories you're writing and the research you're doing, but I miss you all. Anyway, let's take a deep breath. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Do another one. Feel your belly rise. Fill up that balloon. Out. One more. Out. Good. All right, let's get comfortable. We are in chapter 5 of Where is Machu Picchu by Megan Stein. And we just started, we're going to hear about the invaders. Chapter 5, the invaders. For almost 100 years, from 1438 to the 1530s, the Inca Empire was strong. Incas ruled a huge area in South America. Until the late 1400s, no one in Europe even knew that North and South America existed. But Christopher Columbus's voyages beginning in 1492 changed that. His discoveries set off a feverish age of exploration. Other explorers wanted to follow Columbus's footsteps. They wanted to find lands to conquer, especially if there was gold. The Spanish explorers and invaders who arrived in South America were called conquistadors. We talked a little bit about that a few weeks ago. One conquistador was a man named Francisco Pizarro. He reached Panama by ship with a small group of soldiers and horses in 1513, and later became mayor of the newly founded Panama City. Pizarro had heard that there was a lot of gold, but he had no idea how much. When he saw the gold the Incas possessed, he decided right then and there to conquer this land. He stood on the beach where he had landed and claimed it for Spain. Wonder how the Incas felt about him claiming their land. The Age of Discovery. The period of time from the late 1400s to the 1600s is called the Age of Discovery, or the Age of Exploration. During that time, Europeans sailed around the world. They were looking for lands or new peoples to trade with. Many countries, especially England and Spain, competed with each other. They wanted these new lands, which belonged to native peoples, for themselves. In many cases, the explorers conquered the native people and took over their land. The early explorers thought they had discovered a whole new world, but the new world they found had been there all along. They didn't discover it. The people living there already knew about it. So the word discovery was wrong in many ways. Picture. Francisco Pizarro, 1475 to 1541. So you could do a subtraction problem. 1,541 minus 1,475 and figure out how old he was when he died. Pizarro was a hard-hearted, brave, brutal, and ambitious man from a poor part of Spain. He didn't know how to read or write, but he was desperate to make a fortune as an explorer. He sailed from Spain to Panama, where he was granted land and slaves by the governor. There he had heard stories of an incredible kingdom of gold. He sailed south to Peru, where the gold was rumored to be. Pizarro had agreed to share any treasures with his men, but partway through the trip, Pizarro's men became sick and wanted to go home. Pizarro stood on the beach and drew a line in the sand. The line, he said, stood for the difference between being safe and being rich. Men who crossed the line might face hunger, thirst, and sickness, but they could also be rewarded with tremendous wealth. Pizarro dared his men to cross the line and come with him. The 13 who did became rich beyond their wildest dreams. It's a picture of him drawing a line in the sand. Atahalpa tried to bargain with Pizarro, back into our story. He offered to fill a huge room with gold and silver as a gift to the Spanish invader. A whole room full of gold? Pizarro was amazed. Atahalpa said it would take a year to bring all the gold to Pizarro, since most of it was in Cusco, hundreds of miles away. For the next several months, the Incas brought gold and silver objects to Pizarro, 600 pounds each day. Gold plates and cups, jewelry, pitchers, jars full of emeralds, and statues for the temple were delivered. Pizarro had agreed to the deal, but he probably never meant to keep his word. While he was waiting for the gold, he played chess with Atahalpa and treated him well. A few months later, though, Pizarro killed the Inca king. According to legend, when the Incas heard the king had been killed, they hid the rest of the gold. Tons of golden objects were hidden in a mountain cave for years. Treasure hunters have searched for it, but no one knows for sure whether it was ever found or even if it ever existed. Some people think the secret fortune in gold may still be hidden there today. The Spanish melted down most of the beautiful golden objects they'd received, including the life-size garden of golden corn. They used it to make ingots, or metal bars, and coins. Some of the treasure was sent back to the King of Spain. Only one piece of gold corn survives today in a museum. After that, the Spanish ruled the Incas by putting puppet kings in power. The puppet kings didn't act on their own. They did whatever the Spanish told them to do. These rulers weren't really in charge of their own country, but one king named Manco Inca tried to rebel against the Spanish. He fled to the city of Vilcabamba and tried to fight the Spanish off for the next 8 years until he was killed. The Incas continued the fight, but eventually lost. By 1572, their empire was gone and their whole way of life was being rubbed out by the Spanish. Over time, the city of Vilcabamba disappeared and became covered by the jungle that surrounded it. As for the magnificent palace of Machu Picchu, it had been lost from sight for decades. Once an Inca king died, the next Inca king was not allowed to use the previous king's palaces. So within a few decades of Pachacuti's death, the jungle vines and forests grew over the buildings of Machu Picchu and covered them. By the time the Spanish arrived, the palace was already hidden. The Spanish probably never even knew it was there. Only a handful of people would see it from that time on until Hiram Bingham arrived 400 years later. I think we can read the next one. Chapter 6. Who was Hiram Bingham III? Ever since he was a boy, Hiram Bingham III had longed for adventure. Growing up in Hawaii, the son of a very strict preacher, Hiram's life at home had been filled with rules. Whenever Hiram broke the rules, his father hit him with a stick. His parents read the Bible all the time. They didn't believe in dancing or having fun. Hiram's only joy was reading. He especially loved Mark Twain's The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Later in life, he loved stories and poems by Rudyard Kipling. His favorite poem was called The Explorer. One of the lines in the poem said, "Something hidden, go and find it." Hiram Bingham III had dreamed of doing just that. When Hiram was 12 years old, he decided to run away from home. He didn't want to just wander down the street for a few hours. He made an elaborate plan to travel thousands of miles to New York and then to Africa. He packed a bag and left the house as if he were going to school. Then he went to the bank where he took out all the money he had saved for college, $250. He and a friend bought tickets on a ship that was leaving that day. It was going to San Francisco on the west coast of the United States. Hiram planned to get to New York City on his own somehow. He thought he could earn money as a newsboy. When he had enough saved, he would sail for England and eventually go exploring in Africa. Picture of him. Come back to that. But the ship that was supposed to leave that day was delayed, and Hiram's friend chickened out. The friend went home and told his own father about the plan. Soon, Hiram's father showed up at the dock. He put an end to the whole thing. Hiram would have to wait a few more years for his life of adventure to begin. Still, after that, his father let him have more freedom, and a few years later, when he was 16, Hiram was sent to a boarding school in Massachusetts. After boarding school, he went on to study at Yale and Harvard University. Eventually, he became a professor of South American history at Yale. Picture of him at the dock and a picture of him at Yale. In 1900, he married Alfreda Mitchell, the granddaughter of Charles L. Tiffany, the man who started the famous jewelry store in New York, Tiffany's. They had 7 sons. But the stuffy, quiet life of a professor was not what Hiram had hoped for. In December 1908, he got the chance to travel to South America for a meeting of professors and scientists. He jumped at the opportunity. After the meeting, which was held in Chile, Hiram went on to Cusco in Peru. His name was Juan Núñez. Oh, sorry, I missed this. There he met a man from the government. His name was Juan Núñez. Núñez told him about some ancient ruins. Hiram wasn't an archaeologist, a scientist who studies ancient peoples by digging up their buildings and finding things they used long ago. He was a history professor. But Núñez insisted that he come along to see the ruins Núñez had visited. Those first ruins were interesting, but not exciting. Hiram knew they couldn't possibly be the lost city of Vilcabamba, the home of the last rulers of the Incas. That was what he longed to find. Still, Hiram had brought along a camera, so he took some pictures. He also had with him a book called Hints to Travelers. The book said that if a traveler found some ruins, he should make careful measurements of the site. It also said he should write down complete descriptions of everything he saw. Hiram did all of that. He even made a map of the site. He would need all these things to show other professors and experts when he got home. Whether he knew it or not, right then, Hiram was going to come back to South America to search for Vilcabamba. He was now setting forth on a life of adventure, just as he always wanted. If he found Vilcabamba, the discovery would put his own name in the history books. For a history professor, that would be a very big deal. I think you could go out and measure your own site in your backyard and make your own discoveries. There was one spot I wanted to read about Rudyard Kipling. I skipped over that because I didn't want to interrupt our story. Rudyard Kipling, 1865 to 1936. Rudyard Kipling was a British writer who was born in India. When he was 6 years old, he was sent to live with an unpleasant family in England. At 16, he went back to live in India and worked for a newspaper. Eventually, he sailed all over the world and landed in America. He met the famous American writer Mark Twain and then moved to Vermont. He wrote The Jungle Book along with many poems and novels. In 1896, he moved back to England, but he never stopped exploring. He sailed to Africa just as Hiram Bingham hoped to do. In 1907, Kipling won the Nobel Prize for Literature, the highest honor a writer can receive. It'd be interesting to look up some of the things that he has written, or maybe even to read The Jungle Book sometime. All right, well, that was chapters 5 and 6. I think we'll stop there today. I hope you enjoyed that part of our story. It's very interesting. I'm excited to learn about it and to see everything that you all are learning as well. Have an amazing day. Get out and enjoy the sunshine. Bye, guys.